Hello and welcome to the 48 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1 Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight's episode and the NutriBullet in the background brought to you by Jennifer Rooney and our postseason sponsor, Wilson. And we want to talk about Wilson's Omaha experience. They're going to have limited edition products from EvoShield, DeMarini, Louisville Slugger, and Wilson themselves. Shop for bats and gloves and gears at the Omaha experience. It'll be over in the Omaha Baseball Village, right next to the stadium, or you can go online at evoshield.com/Omaha all tournament long. Definitely do not go to Omaha without checking out the Baseball Village. It's awesome, and the whole Wilson setup there is tremendous. So we are fired up for our postseason partnership with Wilson. I am joined by the distinguished gentlemen of D1Baseball.com, Kendall, Jay Rogers, Aaron Zebediah Fitt, hashtag Zebby Barrels, and Joseph Jose Healy. Gentlemen, good evening. I have no idea what day it is or what part of the week it is, but we're fired up. I do know that Omaha starts this week. And other than that, what else do we need to know? Hello.
Yeah.
That's it. It seems pretty comprehensive to me.
That's right.
That's all you
We're
gotta
going
say.
to Nebraska, and we'll figure it out from there, Joe.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I got home from my trip to Baton Rouge. I literally spent the last couple hours throwing clothes randomly into a suitcase. I might have packed 6 outfits. I might have packed 25. I really don't know, but we're going to find out next week.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who waits till tomorrow morning. I think my flight leaves at 12, so that means I'll pack at about 9 a.m.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I roll.
I like
Joe,
that.
Joe, are you going to bring your party boy shirt? Are we going to get Swaggy Joe?
Oh, I have several. I have probably 7 or 8 just
yes.
really top-notch shirts that I'm – not all of them are debuting. A couple
Party
debuted
boy.
in Baton Rouge. A couple debuted
Does it
in
actually
Hoover.
say party boy?
No, it should,
Kendall, you got a party boy shirt on right now. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
do. I
swaggy.
actually have a
It's
shirt my
swag.
wife got me that says pull boy. I may wear that to
boy.
the first game this weekend.
Yeah, there you go. Heyo.
I mentally I've packed, but I've not executed the packing. I like to visualize it first, Joe, and then I execute the packing. But I had no party boy shirts in my walkthrough, so I've got to revamp. This is
Yeah, I mean, you were the one that suggested we do like a Hawaiian shirt night or something. So
Ooh,
I mean,
I like it. We could do that. I'll bring this. We'll have maybe we'll do Hawaiian night while Aaron's not there.
Hey, Runes, I want to see the purple tie, the green tie.
Mhm.
Your tie game on Squeeze Play this year was you elevated your game. Now it wasn't Christopher from Louisville style, like the cream jackets, with the pastels. That's unbeatable. But you got to stay, you got to stay within yourself, stay in your lane,
Yeah.
and you did.
I
think you gave us the best version of you, and I just want to say I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Wasn't there quickly, Runes, on Squeeze Play? First of all, fabulous job by you and the team, and I mean that sincerely. Jokes aside,
Really awesome.
wasn't there a deal like on day 1 of regionals where Matt Schick didn't have a belt or something for a stand up at
Yes,
the beginning of
that's
the show?
correct. Yeah.
So what you're saying basically is Matt Schick choked, is what you're saying. Like the moment got too big, he choked. Like that. I don't want to hear any excuses about that.
Yeah, I think there's another side to it where you're about to be, on air, hot mic for 50 straight hours, and you're kind of sending a subliminal message to the producer, like, really, we want to do a stand-up? Like, are we sure we want to do a stand-up? I don't have a belt. It's kind of like Potsy Weber in Happy Days not wearing his uniform under his sweatpants. Like, Coach, you don't want to do this. This is not what you want to do. So I think I had an issue for the stand-up too. I had my white Chuck Taylors on, but that's about as swaggy as I got.
It's pretty swaggy.
Yeah. You know what, Fitzy, I'll wrap us with this. I appreciate the tie comments. We did try to make a concerted effort after, let's be honest, not a great showing for Coach Rooney in 2022. But the commentary I got from my family was that I looked pale next to Chris from Louisville. So, I don't know if I need to go
He does have a
tanning
good
bed
tan.
or what we need to do about that. But anyway.
By the way, I'm still getting over last night's game, Stanford, Texas.
Ooh, I feel terrible about that. We all do.
Speaking of party boy not feeling very well.
Yeah. No, let's not spoil that. So great segue, KR. Look at you. The instincts are
Thank
strong
you.
in this one, the force. Let's do this. So we're gonna preview the 8 teams headed to Omaha. As we are headed to Omaha. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go around the horn similar to last week. We're gonna do for each team a lineup keys, the keys to the position player group, keys to the pitching staff, a stat that matters, so a unique statistic, and then their path to win it all. Like what's it have to look like if these guys, this team that we're talking about is going to win it all? Gentlemen, are we ready? Shall we begin?
That works. By the way, real quick, just
Yes,
kind
sir.
of give an idea just how like star-studded and power-packed this field of 8 is. How about this from our preseason top 25 guys? LSU 1, Tennessee 2, Stanford 3, Wake 6, Florida 7, TCU 15, Virginia 19. So 7 of the 8 teams were preseason top 20.
Which is pretty standard for. I find that
Yeah.
usually our preseason top 25. If I may give us a little bit of a shout. I mean, we usually get about 7 out of 8 preseason top 25 teams get to Omaha. Sometimes it's 6, but I don't think it's ever been less than 6. Really, maybe 5, but I mean 7 out of 8 is pretty good.
I agree. Preseason rankings are shockingly accurate. Like not as far as picking the actual places, but like the teams that are on the board are typically, those are the teams. So, all right, boys, let's do this. So I will I'll kick us off and I'll kind of tell us the team and how they got here, and then we'll go from there. See if I can remember our color codes. Gold, that's you, Joe. So Wake Forest, we're going to do first. Wake Forest obviously won the Winston-Salem Super Regional. Really close game with Alabama in game 1. Hit 9 home runs and ran away from them in game 2. And in Wake Forest, I thought game 1 was really productive for them. They won a very close, tense, could have gone either way game. I just thought that was awesome for Wake Forest and really showed you what, Alabama's talent and character. But game 2, not so much. They hit 9 home runs and, put up a 20 spot. So, Joe, you want to give us the lineup keys for Wake Forest, please?
Absolutely. Don't just stand there and hit if I'm Wake Forest.
I like that.
Charles Schwab Field plays a little more offensive than it used to. However, that can be fickle, right? There are a lot of other factors that go into it. How hot it is, how thick the air is, which way is the wind blowing, all of that kind of stuff. And furthermore, they're in a bracket full of teams that also have plenty of power. And so I'm not entirely sure that that's going to be the best ticket for Wake Forest. Also, while they did hit a lot of home runs, they are largely centered around Wilkin and Kurtz when it comes to that. Justin Johnson hit 16 as well, but it's not like they have 7 guys with double-digit home runs or something along those lines. So if I'm Wake Forest, I'm looking to make things happen a little bit. Let's put some runners in motion. Let's play to our strengths, which is that, hey, we've got, our lineup goes 7 deep with guys or however many deep with guys that have had really nice seasons and can make things happen. Let's not sit here and just swing and hit fly balls, because that's kind of where things get tricky. Can you do that in Omaha these days? A little better than used to, but that's really not where I would try to butter my bread if I were Wake Forest. So don't just stand there and hit. Let's do some things. Let's put some guys in motion. Let's create some action.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the big storylines of the whole thing is can the offense travel to Omaha? I actually looked up in the game notes for Wake Forest. They are so they're 52-10. Obviously, a incredible record. They're 6-6 when they don't homer. Now, I think I'm gaming that a little bit in that I think most teams, when they don't homer, probably have a fairly mediocre record. Like homering is a fairly characteristic statistic of winning baseball. But and I also think too, like TD or not TD Ameritrade, the Chuck box doesn't play, it doesn't play as formidable as it did 10 years ago when we had different equipment, all that type of stuff. But it will be interesting because I'm with you on that, Joe. I will transition us to the pitching keys for Wake Forest. And if I could quote the great Billy Joel, don't go changing to try and please me. This is, you play in a super schmedium ballpark. I would say Wake Forest, the Couch, is the most hitter-friendly ballpark in America, and you still led the nation in ERA by a very wide margin. I mean, that is borderline unthinkable, maybe not even borderline. So if you're Wake Forest, just do your thing on the mound. They've got All-Americans in the rotation. They've got All-Americans in the bullpen. I think the thing that's really changed the equation for Wake Forest, took, what was incredible and made it, double plus incredible, is now they've got this Sean Sullivan, because he got that break. He's in this use him anytime you want mode. And he was phenomenal in that 5-4 game against Alabama. Faced 10 hitters, punched out 7. So, now your rotation is kind of louder, keener, really louder, Hartle, Keener with Sean Sullivan whenever you want to use them, and you still have that bullpen of Roland, Massey, Manasseh. I mean, it's kind of a joke, right? So anyway, that's the keys to the pitching staff for Wake Forest is you've already survived the worst pitching conditions you're going to see this year, your own home ballpark. So, just do your thing.
The only stadium that rivals theirs for being hitter friendly is, as you guys called it last year on the podcast, Bob Turtle Thomas Stadium for Maryland.
Turtle should have a stadium named after him. Who are we kidding? Green is Kendall on our little code sheet here. And Kendall, you're going to do one stat that matters, please.
Well, Wake Forest scored 27 runs and was it or 20 something like that. 27 runs in 2 games against Alabama. Wake Forest outscored its opponents 75-16 through 5 NCAA tournament games, guys. That's a plus 59 run differential. It's the highest of any team going into the College World Series in NCAA tournament history. Just an incredible showing, whether it's Brock Wilken over the weekend in the Super Regional, Nick Kurtz and company. I mean, that's just a really, really good lineup, and that's a pretty important stat going into Charles Schwab this weekend.
Kendall, I stole your word to describe Wake Forest throughout all of squeeze play. Mm-hmm. Terrifying. Like that.
They look amazing.
Yeah, they look
almost too amazing. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're almost look too good.
But I'll pump Fitzy's piece on this too. Like that you start to worry about that, but then you start to get to know this team a little bit, and they just seem unencumbered by all this. Like there's a massive personality on this team, and really, really cool group. Fitzy, you want to tell us how they're going to do the whole thing? How they'll win it?
Yes. So Wake Forest can win it all if they just, if they be themselves, really. I mean, they've been the best team in the country all year long. They have not had a losing weekend all the way to Omaha. And, they don't need to outscore teams by 59 runs over 5 games. Like, one of those games was a 1-run game against Alabama. It was 5-4. They won that game. They've won plenty of games. I mean, when they didn't have, like, for a while in ACC play, their offense really wasn't that, scary. I mean, like they were just kind of doing it with pitching. Like you look at even down the stretch, Virginia Tech, they won 6-3, they won 7-5. There's a 6-0 win against BC. There's a 4-2 win. Like there's a lot of games that they've won because they have the best pitching staff in the country, and that will travel. It has traveled all year long. It will travel to Omaha, even if their offense, can they adjust their style to the ballpark? I think they can. Because I actually think they hit a lot of line drives and I don't think they're overly reliant upon the home run. They're up there in doubles too. They hit a fair amount of doubles, but mostly, I think they can just do everything. I mean, they can do everything. They play great defense, second best fielding percentage in this field, which actually surprised me. I knew the defense was pretty good, but the fielding 980. I mean, it's top 20 in the country in fielding percentage. They do it all well, and if they just stay in character, then they go out and win it all because they're the best team.
Yep. Very good. All right, boys, let's go to LSU. And LSU won the Baton Rouge Regional. Then they played Kentucky in the Baton Rouge Super Regional. And I would just say that it just felt like Kentucky was scrambling to try and keep up with LSU and just couldn't. Like LSU just this was a great version of them. I'm going to take this opportunity to give an apology to the LSU fan base. A couple of years ago, I said that I felt like the box wasn't as intimidating as it used to be. And I will say that, when I think about 2019, Stanford went to Mississippi State, and it was like playing in a haunted house. And that was the same year Florida State went to LSU for a Super Regional and looked very comfortable. Now, maybe that's being hypercritical. I will say this. The LSU fan base seems rejuvenated to me by this team. Like it feels like the old school LSU fan base to me. And the most important part is Alex Box Stadium these 2 weekends has been electric. And these fans waited 7 hours for game 1 of this Super Regional on Saturday. And still, for the skiing start, it was crazy house. Like, it was awesome. So, again, that is my mea culpa to the LSU fan base. We back, baby. I mean, the original gangsters of college baseball are back on top. Now, I will say that, the Arkansas fan bases, the Mississippi State fan bases are still incredible and have been so impressive over the last couple of years. But LSU, this just, going to the box was scary as heck these last 2 weekends, and LSU delivered. Fitzy, I believe you are up for the keys to the lineup, if you will.
Yes. So, it's kind of the same thing we were talking about with Wake Forest, right? We got to be able to drive the gaps. That's the key in Omaha. Again, you're not going to be able to, rely on hitting the home run. And LSU is a team now where I think they are more reliant upon the home run even than Wake Forest is. I mean, LSU's second in the country in homers and per game, and Wake is third, so that part isn't as big a difference. But this team hits a lot of fly balls. They're way down in doubles per game, which is something I always look at. We headed to College World Series. I like teams that hit a lot of doubles because that means you're driving the gaps, hitting line drives. LSU is 162nd in the nation in doubles per game. Whereas Wake, is 65th. So like Wake has a lot of doubles and home runs. LSU did not have a lot of doubles. And to me, that is a little bit something that I'm a little nervous about. It feels like this team really needs to hit the home run. Now they have a lot of good hitters, period. We know, Cruz is just maybe the best pure hitter in the country. He hits a lot. He's got a flat stroke. He can hit a lot of line drives and even hard ground balls that get through. Certainly Tommy White, he's not just a power hitter. He can hit for average, uses the backside really well. They're going to have to do that though. They're just like, you can't fall in love with the long ball. So that's all. I mean, and again, that's going to be a familiar theme here because we got a lot of power hitting teams in this field of 8. But LSU particularly stands out because they have so many home runs and not very many doubles.
Love it. That's I never done that, Fitzy, but I'm on that on my flight tomorrow. Check out doubles per game. That's clever.
Well,
look at you.
Check out the CWS stat pack. It's on our site today. It breaks
better.
all this stuff down.
I have a sub. I'm done. I'm on it. Joe, you have the chuckers for LSU, right? Keys to the pitching staff? Go for it.
LSU needs to let the format work for them. One thing I like about what they've done of late is that they've kind of stopped experimenting on the mound. They know who their guys are, and maybe they'll be good enough. Maybe they won't. They're certainly not as unassailable as I like Florida's bullpen core better. I obviously like Wake's bullpen core better. But what LSU is running out there right now, they've kind of figured some things out. Riley Cooper, Nate Ackenhausen, Gavin Guidry. And the format works for them, right? I mean, hopefully for their sake, like they're going to hope that Skeens goes out there and throws something close to a complete game, right? But in the event he doesn't, or specifically in the second game when they start, I assume, Ty Floyd, for LSU, don't be afraid to cycle through those guys. You don't have to wait around and just let Riley Cooper wear it or whoever wear it. If he gets 2 outs and you need to move on to someone else, do it, because they're all going to have that day off the next day and you can cycle back through all of them again 2 days later. Whereas if you throw Riley Cooper 55 pitches and he wears it a little bit, well, now you've burned him for a couple, at least for that next game probably. And you better hope that Guidry and whoever else is pretty good that day because you took an option off the table. For LSU, I think it's about finding being able to give those opposing teams different looks and using a handful of guys as opposed to the way other teams would do it, which is, hey, this is our guy and we're going to bring him in at the first sign of trouble and we're going to live or die with that guy. LSU needs to do it a little bit differently. So let the format, the days off work for you. Sprinkle in your bullpen guys. Don't necessarily push the gas pedal all the way down with the one guy you bring into the game first.
I feel
that is also going to be – go ahead, Fitzy.
I was just going to make a joke that I feel bad for our podcast-only audio listeners that didn't get to see Joe's sprinkle gesture just now. That was...
just do it yourself, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a downward-facing spirit fingers kind of thing. like I'm seasoning ground beef.
Ooh, there you go.
It's a shame, Joe. You need to save the spirit fingers for Thursday, where you can start earning some points for the nonsense tracker. That's
true. I do need to save some bits for the nonsense tracker for sure. I don't want to empty the clip on the podcast.
I was going to say, Joe, that I want to print a T-shirt for Coach Rooney that says "Let the format work for you." Like I want that to be my motto too. Like that.
I'm wearing a shirt that says "Make them feel you."
You need to. That we all need.
That's my goal this week is to find a Wake Forest shirt that just has that slogan on there.
I've seen some shirts now that just say MTFY, which I mean, let's get right to it.
Even better.
All right, let's do it.
Boys, I have the stat that matters, and it's very much a follow-up to what you just said, Joe. So here it is. So remember, the 3 key arm injuries for LSU this year: Grant Taylor out for the year, Chase Shores out for the year, and then Garrett Edwards got hurt during the year. And Garrett Edwards had become the moment of truth reliever for LSU. And in the 20 games after Garrett Edwards suffered what proved to be a season-ending elbow injury, LSU's bullpen posted a 7.23 ERA in just over 88 innings. So that's when the panic meter was really at a high point. over the last 12 games, as we sit here today, the Tiger relievers, LSU relievers, have a 3.80 ERA over 47 and a third innings. So to your point, Joe, they've settled on guys and it's working. Like these guys they've found roles and the numbers have normalized and they're pitching to their talent. So, that 3.80 ERA, those of us that are carrying this inclination that LSU's bullpen is tragic and a big problem, 3.80 ERA does not, it's improved dramatically.
Yeah.
So, Kendall, you have the how they win it all, right?
Well, there's like a recurring theme here, right? When you look at LSU, it's pitching outside of Paul Skeens. Obviously Joe mentioned Riley Cooper, Gavin Guidry, who's transitioned from the infield to to a back end bullpen role, threw really well over the weekend. Thatcher Hurd didn't throw last week in the Super, so 2 weeks ago when he threw, struck out 12 in 5 innings. So really, I think when you look at this LSU team, I think there was so much said about this being kind of the super team. I think now they've gotten Omaha, I think they have a lot of pressure kind of off their back. Like they've done what they were expected to do. Now, a lot of LSU fans say they need to win the national championship. I think just getting Omaha relieves some of that pressure. And what I wonder is, does it relieve some of this pressure with this pitching staff too? And so that's gonna be the biggest key for me. They can go toe to toe with Wake Forest offensively. The problem with a team like Wake Forest is just, pitching wise, they seem to have a huge advantage outside of Paul Skeens. So LSU needs to find a way to kind of change the pendulum a little bit from a pitching standpoint in this bracket.
Very good. Well done. And again, for the LSU fans that are mad at Michael Patrick Rooney, just rewind this podcast 6 minutes. I officially apologized. I don't need 7,000 clown emojis in my timeline. We're good. We're good. I am so sorry.
What did you just pick like a fan base every year? Was it Tennessee fans last year?
Yeah,
right?
Tennessee. Yeah, I thought me and LSU were through it, but we weren't. We're holding grudges. It's okay though. It's all good. It's all fun and games. We made it to Omaha. We can all be friends, and we all would admit that Omaha is better. There's some great. Before we get to the next team, there's some great GIFs on Twitter about Omaha bar owners when LSU qualifies for. The College World Series, and it's obviously celebratory, and it's true. I mean, the LSU fan base has helped build this event over the years.
Can I make the boldest prediction of the week that LSU will have more Jello shots than Oral Roberts?
So, I think you're probably right, but I will say this: I think that Oral Roberts is going to be the darling for anyone who's not an LSU fan.
Yeah?
Okay.
I think the irony will play a factor. I think people will just be like, "Oh yeah, give me 30 of them on Oral Roberts." I mean, I think there's a chance. I think ORU is the dark horse in the Jello shot game.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
That's right.
I certainly don't think they're going to finish. For that reason, I agree. They're not. They'll probably finish ahead of Stanford. Would be my thought there at a bare minimum.
Too hard to do.
Right.
Yep. All right. Speaking of Stanford, let's do Stanford. The Cardinal. They won. They've played more elimination games the last 3 years than literally anybody in the country. They did it again. They lost game 1 to Texas, blew a 5-2 lead in the 9th. Then Quinn Matthews threw the complete game of all complete games, and then they won that heartbreaking game we talked about in the beginning of the podcast in game 3. Just two really good programs, Texas and Stanford. Stanford kind of outlasts Texas. And they are in Omaha for the 3rd straight year. Of course, incredible year for Texas. We've said that on this podcast. What David Pierce and his new coaching staff have done after replacing a ton of star power, really remarkable that they were pitches away from the College World Series. Kendall, you have the keys to the lineup for Stanford.
I think the biggest thing with Stanford is be aggressive. I think the two things here, one, just watching them against Lucas Gordon yesterday, especially late in that game, they were taking a lot of change-ups from Lucas Gordon. And I think if you're Stanford, like you can't just continue to just take change-up after change-up after change-up. You need to be aggressive because kind of number 2, I was looking at Aaron's, story on Waco over the weekend. And he talked about, Rhett Lauder's plus change-up. If you're just going to sit back and let Rhett Lauder throw change-up after change-up, like it's going to be a long day for your offense. So as much as I like this offensive lineup, I think Texas kind of showed the recipe against them by just throwing a lot of off speed and a lot of changeup. We'll see if they make those adjustments going into the College World Series. But keep an eye on Carter Graham. He's a guy that's had a lot of swing and miss this year, 52 strikeouts. But guys, I thought he had a couple of really important, really impressive at bats against Texas. There was one late in the game yesterday that he went opposite field on a breaking ball. So keep an eye on Carter Grant. But again, I think Stanford needs to be more aggressive. They're a powerful lineup, but again, you can't just sit there and watch Rhett Lauder throw changeups all day long, because then he'll just chew you up with everything else.
Am I the only one that when I hear that expression in my brain, it's going be aggressive,
be aggressive. Absolutely.
Come on now. Yes.
Absolutely.
We're doing that in the press box this next couple of weeks. That's happening.
I don't know about that.
If Seamus, if we feel like Seamus is being tentative on the mic, that chant's breaking out. Seamus, be aggressive. Be aggressive. Can't have passive calls on the scoring table. Fitzy, you got the chuckers, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, here we go. Stanford. The key for Stanford guys, throw, as Wayne Graham used to say sometimes, he would make his mound visits. He'd get to the mound, he'd trudge all the way out there, take 45 seconds, and he'd get there and he'd go, throw strikes. And then he would turn around and he'd walk back.
I don't think that's all he said.
Well, anyway, that's what we need to do if we're Stanford. We need to throw strikes because they are the worst strike throwing staff out of these.
Awful.
It is 4.97 walks per 9 innings, which is 186th in the nation. That is not good. That is way behind all the other teams in this field. And we saw it bite them against Texas in the game that they lost in the Super. I think it was Bruno had 3 walks, load the bases, and they wound up losing the game. I mean, when Bruno and Dowd, I just think are so huge because when they're sharp, they're just awesome. But they can lose the command. And Matt Scott too, I felt like he was fighting the command a little bit. It was a tight zone now. The other day, it was a tight zone, and he got a little frustrated by it. I don't blame him, but yeah, you got to be able to, control yourself. And he, to his credit, he did get out of the kick out in that key spot. But those guys, I mean, if they're throwing strikes, they're really, really good. They got to minimize the free bases. That's really the key here for Stanford.
And by the way, Chris Gennaro of Helium or Pat or whoever did, this is your best graphic so far. Yeah. This is the best one. It's, if you're listening only, it's a box with 9 squares that says throw it here, and then outside of the box it says do not throw it here. It is, we need a screenshot of this on Twitter. This is CG. This is your best work. This is amazing. We'll see what else you have in store for us.
By the way, Runes, Aaron mentioned Bruno. I think he's the key to the whole World Series for them because he has such electric stuff. But he had those 2 outings in Texas that were just flat out bad. And for them to make a run in this thing, he's going to have to be good.
No question. Yeah, and you saw it was clever in Game 3. They tried to throw him in the 6th inning to try and de-lever it a little bit. But you're right. They're going nowhere fast with him throwing to one hitter and then taking a shower.
And when I picked Stanford to win it all heading into this thing is because I felt like Bruno and Dowd, Bruno especially, had really found it, and they were great in the second half. And I'm a little nervous about what I've seen here in the postseason.
Yep. Joe, you have the stat that matters, correct?
I do. But first, I have a free business idea for Omaha. Okay.
Yes,
we all expect that Stanford will finish last or close to last in the Jello Shot Challenge. What if a wine bar in Omaha does a glass of wine challenge? Now that is something Stanford might be able to get into. You know
with
what I mean?
Some Wordle mixed in.
I feel like their wine standards are pretty high, though.
Are you disparaging the Omaha wine bars?
Ooh,
of course not.
I just think that's the kind of party that I feel like they would have a good shot in that. That's a free business.
La Buvette is their place.
But don't sleep on the TCU people now. All the Sarloses will come to town, and
that's right. Make their own wine. Yeah.
Oh, see that makes it an even better business idea though, because we don't just want it to be one team.
UVA, you got to think would be do pretty well.
Yeah, we could get after some wine this week. Go ahead, Joe.
What we're trying to do is create an Arkansas Ole Miss Jello Shot situation from last year at the wine bar. So we do need multiple teams to kind of be involved.
Yeah. But by the way, Runes, this counts as our Inane Banter topic.
Yeah, that's good. I was gonna cross promote if I could, not cross pollinate, but cross promote on the Shock Factor podcast that was released today. Yes. Jake Mintz came clean and just said he's leading with Bud Light. He's not even going the wine route. He's just getting after Bud Light at the airport bar, Epley Airport. So Jake Mintz, the great Jake Mintz, will not be participating in the Stanford, Virginia TCU wine off. He will not be he will not be part of that.
It's a real
Joseph, proceed with your stat that matters.
Stat that matters. Since May 1st, Stanford's Tommy Troy, Carter Graham, and Alberto Rios, with scores of 100, 97, and 95 respectively, own the 3 highest batter scores in the country. Now, what does that mean? I'm asking. What is that? What does
I
that
can tell
mean?
you what it means. I think.
Go ahead, Fitzy.
I think it's just total bases plus RBIs. I think it's a stat that
Oh,
I think it's actually a stat that I invented for our incidentally for our daily stat roundups we do in the season. I said let's just do total bases plus RBIs, and then we'll sort it that way. I mean, if one of our producers can hear me and confirm that that's what we're talking about, I think that's what this is.
Okay. Well, I said that partially facetiously because you understand that, okay, in any sort of relevant statistic, if 3 batters on the same team have the 3 highest batter scores in the country, like I don't really care how the math happened. It just goes to tell you that those guys have been extremely, extremely hot. And, Tommy Troy and Carter Graham, I think are names that people, especially if you watch the CWS, those guys have been on College World Series teams before. Alberto Rios is the Pac-12 Player of the Year. And I have to admit, like I will, and I feel like I've really let him down as someone who has the Pac-12 network. There's a small club of us that have the Pac-12 network, and we need to all be a lot more aware of Alberto Rios than I was this season. Yeah. I knew the name, but until this weekend, seeing him play against Texas, I hadn't seen a lot of him, and now we'll always remember his phantom home run in the last inning of last night's game. That?
So yeah, I've never seen that before.
But it fooled me too. And oh, by the way, Texas fans, like the helmet coming off, it's fine. We don't really need to be up in arms about that.
Let's not.
Like the rule is not interpreted to mean that he should have been out for his helmet coming off.
Right.
Let's be clear about that. Anyway, regardless, 3 really hot Stanford batters: Tommy Troy, Carter Graham, Alberto Rios.
And I will say we're confirmed on the Pat stat, if you will, hashtag Pat stat, batter scores, total bases plus RBI. So that's pretty good right there.
Yeah,
like
indeed.
It. Very good. How Stanford wins it all is me. And I wrote 2 things: stay out of the losers bracket and put up a bunch of crooked numbers. Now, Stanford has made a habit of the losers bracket, but they've not had much success in Omaha since in these appearances. And, their pitching depth has cratered over the last few weeks. Like you said, Fitzy, when you had selected them, their pitching depth was really coming online. And it is just not, it is gone backwards. So I look at this bracket, I see Wake Forest, LSU, Tennessee. That is not going to go well for Stanford in the losers bracket. They have the least pitching depth of any of those teams by a wide margin. Now, they also have a scary, scary offense. So that's the key to me if you're Stanford is get out with 2 wins. That offense has got to be humming, put up big crooked numbers and overwhelm teams. That's what the path looks like for the Cardinal, in my opinion.
And also a team, by the way, again, looking at that doubles number, Stanford 11th in home runs per game in the country, but also 22nd in doubles per game, which is the second best in our field of 8. So they do hit a lot of doubles. Keep that in mind.
Very good. All right, let's go to the Tennessee Volunteers, and the very interesting path. You could argue we said a long time ago they were going to be a nightmare 2 seed for somebody, and that did come to bear. They were a nightmare for Clemson, played that 14-inning game, just an epic game, probably the game of this tournament so far. They win that regional, then they go to, of course, controversy always follows. So they go to Hattiesburg, and that was, of course, hotly discussed. And there was a window there for Southern Miss. They won game 1, and they're up 4-0 in game 2, if memory serves. Tanner Hall's on the mound, and they beat Tanner Hall. They just went and did it, and then kind of overwhelmed Southern Miss a little bit in game 3, or just certainly were better. I mean, Chase Burns is touching 102, and there you have it. Tennessee, the team after the team, is the one going back to Omaha for the second time in 3 years, which is really incredible. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't take a second and say, man, what Tony Vitello has done at Tennessee, right? Like, they didn't even threaten regionals for 15 years. They didn't even threaten the bubble for 15 years. Now they're in Omaha, what could have been 3 straight years, but 2 out of 3 is what they're going. And, basically what I put is similar to what you guys said. Tennessee's 6th in the country in home runs. They play in a park that lends itself to the long ball, and probably not going to be that way at the Chuck Box. And so but I do think Tennessee doesn't have to play that way. The thing for me is Zane Denton, can you stay hot? Christian Moore is running as good of at bats as any individual player in this tournament right now. Christian Moore looks like a big leaguer to me. And this Tennessee lineup, you start to run through it, it's more talented than probably you would think, because it's a lot of new faces. So, it's like a lot of these teams, you can't be home run happy. If that's why they played poorly on the road, they're going to have to get through that. I think they're just through that, and so again, get Christian Moore, let Christian Moore influence this thing and be more diverse than just the long ball. There you go. Who has got the Chuckers? The Chuckers is green. That's you, Kendall, right?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's all about Chase Dollander and to an extent, Chase Burns as well. I just think when you look at Chase Dollander, guys, the last two starts, the last three starts really, 24 strikeouts, 3 walks. I think the biggest thing with Dollander is he kind of went another gear in the Super Regional. There were seasons on the line. And he went out there and was kind of vintage Chase Dollander. Like, he was nasty in that start against Southern Miss over the weekend. So I just think when you look at Tennessee, and let's assume they're starting Andrew Lindsey in the opening game, I would assume so, since that's kind of what they've done the last few weeks. But in that situation, Chase Dollander is either putting you in the driver's seat in the next game, or he's saving your season. And if you're going to run through that bracket, you're going to need him again after that. So I think for me, Chase Dollander is the key for Tennessee. If he pitches the way he did against Southern Miss over the weekend, they're going to have a pretty decent shot to knock off LSU, even with Paul Skeens on the mound.
Hey, and by the way, Kendall, Dollander's the one that was down 4-0 and just gutted it out and came back and won that game.
He
right?
was
Like,
they were down 4-0. He just turned the
another
ignition
gear.
on and
Yeah.
just went crazy. I mean, it was like he just hit another gear.
Love it.
So do you think? And I don't know. I assume they haven't said yet, but do you expect Lindsey to start against LSU and not Dollander?
That'd be a great question.
This is based on no report. This is just Joe's hunch. I would say yes. I think they're pretty committed to Andrew Lindsey at the front of the rotation. Yeah. I mean, not only have his numbers been pretty good, but Tony Vitello has been pretty effusive and upfront about saying, we needed Andrew Lindsey at the front of our rotation at the time that we put him there. And so I think there's some aspect of loyalty is not the right word, but just kind of the figurative place of Andrew Lindsey as the front of the rotation guy.
It feels like, that said, like it's one thing if it's a traditional 3-game series, or even where you're playing 3 days in a row. But if we're talking about a format where you play and then you get a day off and you play again, I almost wonder if you just go with the guy who is your guy, who is the best guy, period, and it gives you a chance to bring, use him more times in the series.
He can maybe start 3 times in Omaha.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly an argument to be made for it. I would probably start Dollander, but I would not be surprised if we see Lindsey.
It's interesting.
And again, let's not paint. You guys aren't doing this, but I'll say it out loud. Let's not paint Andrew Lindsey as a right-handed thumber. Like, this is 96-mile-an-hour turbo sinkers. Like, they basically have 4 Friday night guys on Tennessee. Like, that's basically what we're talking about. But it's fair. I mean, I think that's a really legit conversation. Go ahead, stat that matters, Fitzy.
Yeah. So the stat that matters here, we're going to talk about the Tennessee bullpen. Through 6 NCAA tournament games, Tennessee's bullpen, the relievers have allowed just 2 earned runs over 22 2/3 innings, which is a 0.76 ERA. And it's also, I think, a 0.89 whip and a 29-10 strikeout walk ratio during that span. So they have been lights out in the pen. And certainly you mentioned Chase Burns. I mean, it was just electric. It felt like game over, once it was like, wow, like this, I mean, it was 4 or 5-0. I think it was 4-0 when he entered the game, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just like, they don't have a chance. I mean, it was it's 102. And then of course he's got the slider, and like, he's such a difference maker in that role. And of course he's not the only guy back there. I mean, Halverson's got big time stuff, and you've got, AJ Russell, you've got Aaron Coombs. I mean, you got different guys that you can mix with as you need. Certainly Camden Sewell. I mean, he's pitched so many big games over the years for them. They've got variety, they've got depth, but they've got a real dude right now in Chase Burns. That's the guy, guys. Remember a few days ago, I think last week of the pod, I was talking about like that guy at the back end, whether it's a Nick Howard or a Riley Farrell. I kept using those kind of names. Josh Spores, like the big power arm dude coming at you who can just really shut down a game in Omaha. Burns feels like he's that kind of guy for sure.
I like it. Who has Joe? That's
that would
you.
Be me. Yep.
Path to a trophy.
the simplest one is that the Vols pitching staff pitches to the absolute top of its potential. Like it could be just as simple as that. If the 2022 versions of Dolander and Bean and Burns, and then obviously Lindsey being his version of himself from this year, if those guys show up and the bullpen pieces file in accordingly, that might be all it takes. And they've shown signs of that of late, obviously. You guys touched on some of that. The other is that the lineup continuing its momentum. You mentioned Christian Moore, Runes. That's been a big part of it. They found some guys as the year went on. Hunter Inslee, Christian Scott had some good moments. The lineup became less as the season went on, Blake Burke dependent, as he started to swing and miss more and his average dipped in SEC play. Obviously, if he runs into a ball, he can hit it. We saw that in the super regional. Like when he runs into a ball, there's almost nobody in college baseball that can lose a baseball the way that Blake Burke does. But so they found some other more athletic pieces as the year's gone on. Zane Denton has gotten hot again and seems to have a real feel for clutch hits at this point. So, play like the team that we saw last year during the regular season is the simplest way to put it, but that's kind of where this team's at. This has always been a team with national title talent, and maybe it's just taken them this long to get around to it.
Yep. Love it. By the way, that side of the bracket, I mean, buckle your stinking chin strap. Goodness
Watch
gracious.
your lips.
Watch your lips.
Preseason numbers 1, 2, 3, and 6, all on that side of the bracket.
Good Lord. All right. I like it. All right, boys. Speaking of the other side of the bracket, let's do that. We're going to start with the Virginia Cavaliers. They won the Charlottesville Regional. Like East Carolina pressed them a little bit, but Virginia was just, they handled that regional. And then, Duke took them to a game 3. Duke won game 1, and it was the Duke bullpen that outlasted the Virginia bullpen. And then Virginia just kind of kept getting better through the weekend. I'll tell you guys, as we get into this, Virginia gives me a little bit of Arizona 2012 vibes, that position player group, just the athleticism, the way they can, the athleticism plays defensively, offensively. I mean, they're just a very impressive group. Joe, I believe you have the Virginia position players, correct?
I do. Just continue to be who you are offensively. They don't strike out a lot. I think we'll hear a little bit about that shortly with a stat, but they don't strike out a lot. The lineup's not overly dependent on one or two guys to really bail the lineup out. They go pretty deep. And that's a formula that kind of regardless of how you get it done, whether it's the home run, a ball in the gap, stealing bases, making things happen, that generally though is the formula for good offense in Omaha. And you mentioned that Rune's I think that Arizona team's a great example. Just a lineup that, went pretty deep, wasn't dependent on one or two guys, scored their runs in several different ways. I agree with that being kind of how Virginia feels. So just be the offense you've been, which I think is a perfectly set up offense to succeed in that ballpark in this moment.
Yep. Very good. I have the Virginia pitchers and just deep starts. We've kind of looked at Virginia's pitching as just very, very meh. Like it's okay. It's not bad. It's not great. It's just fine, which maybe was the perfect complement for this extraordinary position player group. But the starters for Virginia have gone next level. Connolly Early's been great. Nick Parker's been great. Brian Edgington's been great. I mean, these kids are going deep in the games, and that's timely because I am concerned about the Virginia bullpen. Jake Berry struggled against Duke. Jay Woolfolk struggled against Duke. And when coaches start taking main relievers out of games very, very quickly, that makes me nervous. And you start looking back, and it hasn't been glorious for their bullpen. I might be over-indexing on this a little bit, but I do think these starters, hey, and here's the other thing. If the chalk box plays like it normally does, these pitch to contact starters or, fill up the strike zone starters for Virginia, that works, right? You don't have to punch out 15 to be functional as a pitcher in Omaha. So anyway, that's the key is I think if Virginia can minimize the exposure of their bullpen, they were able to do that in game. They didn't let Duke turn games 2 and 3 into bullpen games like game 1 was. And that was to Virginia's favor. So I think that's the key is these starting pitchers stay on this role that they've been on. And I do think the whole get up in Omaha suits them. Kendall, you have the stat that matters, I believe.
Yeah, Joe alluded to this earlier about Virginia's lineup, but Virginia's hitters own the sixth lowest strikeout rate in the country at 14.9%. Wake Forest ranks second in the field at 17.3%. That's good enough for 37th nationally, guys. Wake Forest, Tennessee, and LSU's pitching staffs are first, second, and third, respectively, in strikeout rate.
Oh boy.
Also, Florida, Stanford, and ORU are 6th, 16th, and 24th. So 7 of the 8 pitching staffs from the top 24. TCU, guys, is the outlier at 77th nationally in that category.
What's the expression? The unstoppable force meets the immovable something, blah blah blah. What is it? Immovable object. All right, good. Glad we cleared that up. Thank you, Fitzy. All right.
Happy to contribute, Coach.
See, yeah. that's the look of a guy who finished #1 in his high school class.
That's right. That's why. That's very good. Fitzy, it's very timely of you. You are going to close out Virginia.
I've got a bone to pick with you people. I got a bone to pick with you people.
Oh, what do you got?
Stealing my points, trampling on my point. Oh, Arizona 2012. I originated.
Oh,
this
no
idea.
way.
Who are you calling you people?
I filled out the chart first,
Kendall.
so I didn't even look at it.
One person.
Kendall,
I did.
Well, Joe and Rooney both trampled on my point, and also the point I've been making this point for weeks. You guys didn't even bother to give me a H/T. Thanks a lot. This team is so similar to the 2012 Arizona team for me. I love, and it's not just because that team, during the height of the dead ball, dead bat era, it was tons of doubles and triples, right? The Mejias and the Mejias Green and the Ruff Snyders and the Rickards. It was just like so many athletes, like live athletes who drove the gaps. And that's what Arizona is. I mean, it's like a very, very athletic team with Ethan O'Donnell and Griff McGarry and, Casey Sauke. And it's just all these guys all over the diamond. Ethan Anderson's a real hitter. Geloff's a real hitter. I mean, of course, Kyle Teal. I mean, it's a line drive machine, and he's a good athlete. It's very, very athletic defense. I think you gotta drive the gaps and you gotta patrol the gaps, right? And they patrol the gaps very well in the outfield because they got great range. They take care of the ball on the dirt. So key in Omaha. I think they're an elite defensive team. I love their defense. I think it's just like superstars everywhere. They play above their fielding percentage, which is perfectly good. But I think they're better than that because they can make the exceptional play and they throw strikes. I mean, that's the other thing is again, it's about minimizing free bases when every out is precious, and they do a really good job of that. They 6th in the nation in fewest walks allowed per 9 innings, but they're also, I mean, and I've been trying to make this point for the last few weeks because I feel like I have not given this pitching staff enough credit, and I've said this repeatedly. I'm going to say it again. I said for most of the year, I was just skeptical of this pitching staff because they don't have the sexy arms. They don't have 96, 98 guys coming at you. It's pitchability strike throwers. It's Nick Parker with his, change up and his cutter. And it's Edgington with that little split change that he's got. And, they're 88 to 90 guys, whatever, kind of early, great pitchability lefty, but like, it's not sexy stuff, but they just get outs and they're 4th in the country in ERA. They're and they're still top 25 in strikeouts too, even though it's not big velocity. They're 25th in the nation in strikeouts. So I just think it's just a very complete team. That the strength is the position players, but boy, that pitching staff is very capable too. And guys, I mentioned it, doubles per game. They lead the country in doubles per game.
And batting average too, right?
I think so.
Yeah, gotta love it. Who was the lefty on Virginia on the national title team? Kirby. Kirby.
Kirby.
He was the prospect. I'm thinking of the kid from Houston. That his name wasn't Kirby.
Yeah,
we'll have to look that
up.
It
was Kirby. Was the guy? Not Wayne Kirby. Who's Wayne Kirby? That's somebody, but it's not the guy we're thinking of.
I know. I can't think of his first name either. Say it again,
Nathan
Joe.
Kirby. Thank you.
Yeah, that's well done. Well done. Very good.
Wayne Kirby is an American former professional baseball right fielder and current coach. He is currently the first base coach for the New York Mets of Major League Baseball.
All right. Wayne Kirby.
Wayne Kirby.
Well done. Look at
Who
that.
expected a Wayne Kirby reference on this podcast? Check your bingo cards.
Yeah, if Wayne Kirby, if it come to find out that he's from Cut and Shoot, Texas, then it's all come full circle.
He's from Williamsburg, Virginia.
Oh,
it might as well be Cut and Shoot.
Yeah, it's the sister city of Cut and Shoot, Texas, Williamsburg, Virginia. All right, boys, let's go to TCU. TCU won the Fayetteville Regional, took down Arkansas, and then they got to host Indiana State because Indiana State couldn't host the Super Regional because A cool story. They've hosted the Special Olympics of Indiana for the 51st straight year. I think there's been like $40,000 raised by people in Fort Worth to send back to the Special Olympics. So that's a cool story. But TCU did end Indiana State's season. The bottom line on TCU is on May 1st, they woke up with a record of 23-20, and they weren't going to the postseason at that pace. They are 19-2 ever since. And, I'd argue the hottest team in this field right now. Okay. And Fitzy, you have their position player group, correct?
Correct. Yes. And my key for TCU's offense is push the action, guys. This is an offense that's constructed a little bit differently than all the rest here, because they're the one offense out of these 8 that kind of relies a little more, or utilizes, I should say. I mean, the others don't even really use the stolen base, but TCU does. 13th in the country in stolen bases per game. They could get things going. This is a team that I think it's actually a really nice kind of balanced, versatile offense. I mean, they hit for average. They got some pop. They work counts pretty well. They draw a lot of walks. They hit their share of doubles. It's kind of just like solid across the board, but that one thing, that the speed element is something that that is a part of their attack that is not really part of any of these other teams' attacks. And so that's just something to keep an eye on here. I think that they can disrupt things a little bit here, play the disruptor.
I like it. And also, Fitzy, you could also go push the action, push the action. That also plays there. So
yeah.
Happy for us there. Who's next for TCU? Gold is Joe, right?
That is correct.
Pitching.
I think this is all about kind of the strategy here. TCU is a team that, and whoever's turn it will be at the end, we'll talk about this. It feels like they have a fairly narrow path compared to a lot of these other teams that we've talked about. And so I think for them, you really got to lean on Cole Klecker in game 1. And look, he pitched really well against Indiana State. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. He's obviously really young. It's going to be a big spot for him. But this feels like a situation where they're going to need to kind of just, get him to whatever the pitch count is, 90, 100 pitches, and just hope for the best on that, and hope that ends up being a win so they can stockpile whatever else they want to use for game 2. Because in terms of starting pitching, once they get past Cole Klecker, it's not quite clear the direction they go. It hasn't been clear this season for them, the direction they go there. So strategery wise, I say lean on Klecker in game 1, but then save as much as you can for game 2, so that if you're in a winner's bracket situation, or heck for that matter, if you're trying to stave off elimination, you can really kind of throw the kitchen sink at whoever your opponent is.
I like it. I have the stat that matters, and it will tie in with their hot streak. From opening day through the end of April, TCU as a team /274, 383, 456, team OPS of 839. Since May 1st, they are slashing 350, 437, 558. The OPS has gone up nearly 150 points to 995. And then Braden Taylor, Braden Taylor's batting average had gotten down to 267 in early May. He's up nearly 50 points in batting average in a month. So, he's a big part of that offense getting turned inside out. So I would argue that a lot of TCU's whole operation has improved since May 1st, but certainly the offense has really, really clicked in. Kendall, you are doing how they win it all, correct?
Well, that was an excellent lead-in, Runes. I just think when you look at TCU's offense, they've been red hot the last couple of weeks. And granted, you look at the run totals into Indiana State, you're like, okay, well, they didn't score 22 runs like Wake Forest. But, I mean, TCU's approach was very good against Indiana State, in the favorable regional. They obviously knocked the cover off the ball against Arkansas. Cole Fontenelle over the weekend, guys, just a really talented kind of big bopper in that lineup. He had a home run over the wall in center field over the weekend. Had like 3 or 4 more really good at-bats against the Sycamores. Carson Bowen's a really talented freshman. Trey Richardson, guys, I think only had a couple of home runs going into postseason, has been red hot as well. And then, of course, Braden Taylor and Elijah Nunez. That's a really, really solid lineup right now. 1 through 8, Luke Boyer is kind of the weak link there. But for the most part, that's a really, really good lineup. And the fact of the matter is, TCU probably doesn't match up great with some of these teams, with Klecker and especially Stottenborough on the mound. But offensively, they're red hot, and they're just as good as anybody right now offensively.
Very good. All right, boys, we got 2 more teams. Let's do Oral Roberts. How did Oral Roberts get here? Boy, let me tell you a story. They were the faux four.
Yeah.
They were the angriest 4 seed in the tournament. They go to Stillwater and just, I don't want to say they ran roughshod over that deal, but they were super, super impressive in Stillwater. And then they get sent to Eugene, Oregon, and just like this unthinkable act of toughness where they lose a game that they're winning 8-0 with the best reliever. Cade Denton is the best reliever in this tournament, and you could argue it at least. And they lose that game and then still win the next 2 games against Oregon in Eugene. I mean, just miraculous. Oral Roberts now, in 24 years of the current format, only the 3rd 4 seed ever to make it to the College World Series. The other 2 were 2012 Stony Brook Sea Wolves and the 2008 Fresno State Bulldogs. So Oral Roberts is the 7th team, and Kendall, you got the offense.
Yeah, guys, I think, by the way, to promote the stat pack as well, which Aaron did a wonderful job on, I got these numbers from the stat pack. When you look at ORU, the couple of things that stand out to me. Number one, they do a really good job of getting on base. It all kind of starts with Jonah Cox. He's the man. Like, he is the fire starter for ORU. And I think the other thing for me, too, is they rank 2nd in the College World Series field of 8 in terms of stolen bases. So, obviously, ORU is one of those teams who, you know what, they may not come at you like Tommy White and Nick Kurtz, but what they're going to do is they're going to find ways to get on base. And once they get on base, they're going to force the action. They're going to make you make plays. And so I think the big key for ORU's offense is getting guys like Jonah Cox on base, getting guys like Holden Breeze on base, and then making things happen from there. If teams can avoid walks and things like that, ORU becomes a lot more beatable.
It's a good thing them and Wake Forest are on the other side of the bracket, Kendall, because you got make them feel you and then make them make plays. I mean, that's converging slogans right there. We don't want to.
You know who will not? You know ORU will have over everyone else is the best names.
Like their last
Holden
names?
Breeze.
Oh, they
got
do
Holden
have good
Breeze.
names.
What was the other? What's the
Jonah
other
Cox
great
is
name they
even
have?
great.
What's the other one? There's Holden Breeze. I'm missing one of them.
Reed Ronan is pretty good. Big Ronan guy.
Yeah, there's a very obvious name.
Blaze Brothers, of course.
Yeah, Blaze Brothers. How could I forget Blaze? So
Blaze Brothers sounds like a tag team. The Blaze Brothers.
I like it.
Holden Breeze is a very cool name, though. No pun intended.
I will find it because I'm going to go through my index cards, but the best names in this tournament are no longer with us because that was the Ryder Bronx. Had some unbelievable Italiano names from the Northeast.
Oh, yeah.
That lefty
by the
reliever.
way, yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of ORU, and I'm sure Joe or Aaron will talk about Zane or Cade Denton. I just almost did it again. Cade Denton here in a minute. But last night I was tweeting about Zane Denton. I called him Cade. The other night I was tweeting about Cade Denton and called him Zane. So I made the point like I'm gonna make this mistake so many times in Omaha when I tweet about games. And Cade Denton's mom actually tweeted at me and said she's from Knoxville. So she was laughing about that she's a Knoxville native.
I love that. All right, so I've totally lost my spot. So Kendall, you just did the offense.
Yeah, so right now we're to Aaron on pitching staff keys for success.
There you go.
Correct.
Good lead in.
There we go. So the key for Oral Roberts, I think, is they need to get off to better starts than they did in the Super Regional. Because they've got a very good weekend rotation. I mean, one of the better ones, I think, one of the more stable rotations here in this field. 3 guys that have, all made 16 or more starts now, right? Jacob Hall and Harley Gollard and Brooks Fowler, and none of them were really great at the Super. And they found a way to win that thing anyway, but it put some strain on the bullpen. And, they had to come back and they just need those guys to go a little deeper, and maybe hand the ball off. Because that's the thing is with Denton at the back. I mean, if you can just get to like the 6th inning and have a lead, you're in great shape. So that kind of feels like the key thing for them is to get some good starts. And then, and you got to imagine again, if they have a lead after 6 or 7, that's a very good bullpen also. I mean, it's not just Denton either. I thought, gosh, I'm blanking on it. The other guy, the Dalton Patton, I think,
Oh, he was great.
well.
Yeah. Kind of a undersized righty that threw the dog out of it.
He impressed me in the Eugene thing. So anyway, that's the key. And let's get some length out of the starters.
Joe, stat that matters, please.
I'll give you two. There's going to be the real one is what the people who are viewing this can see on their screen there. Oral Roberts leads the country in fielding percentage, which is a thing I didn't know until I saw this. They've only committed 36 errors the entire season, but 4 of those errors have come in their last 9 games in the conference tournament and NCAA tournament play. So 32 errors during the regular season. That's pretty incredible. And as we've talked about before, that's a big part of playing in Omaha is if the team that kicks the ball around less tends to have a pretty good chance. So that is interesting. My bonus stat is related to a name that Aaron mentioned there. The first college baseball game I ever covered as a paid member of the media. For a while, I ran my own site, kind of just, on my own dime thing. But my previous stop covering college baseball, the first game I ever covered was Kentucky and Austin Peay in 2019. I was living in the Midwest, so I had limited options opening weekend. Went to see Kentucky and Austin Peay play. The pitcher who took the loss for Austin Peay in that first game, Harley Jollert. Yeah. So how about that little connection there? So that's a little bonus stat for you, a Joe stat, if you will.
Nice.
I like it very much, boys. Let me as we do Oral Roberts. So the their path to victory to me is they've got to keep the offense rolling and stay in the winners bracket, right? Because the format could really work for Oral Roberts in that Cade Denton. I don't know that there's a better reliever in this thing. It all due respect to the Wake Forest relievers. Cade, if you put a gun to my head and said you got one reliever in this field to come in and finish the game, Cade Denton has been just vicious.
Over Burns. You would take him over Burns?
I would. I'm worried about Burns. Well, first of all, Burns has had some moments of, like I'm thinking of Notre Dame Super Regional. Now, in fairness to Chase Burns, he's been thrown in every hellacious scenario you could put a kid in. But I like Burns throwing 102 the other night and screaming bloody murder. Like that just felt weird to me.
Yeah.
Cade Denton has just been carving people up for 2 weeks. So yeah, like that stuff. But anyway, yeah, it's a great challenge though. Like, yes, if you're asking me if I'd like to order a Chase Burns for my bullpen, the answer is yes. But I still think I prefer Cade Denton. He's been like 96, 97 with this sideways slider. And the format, like if they can keep going offensively and he doesn't, he's been pitching 3 straight days in these tournaments or in these weekends, he's not going to have to do that. You mentioned, the other relievers. Jacob Widener's a sidearm lefty who's really awkward. Patton is a sawed-off righty with a big arm. So, I think that's the key. Like, I don't see Oral Roberts being able to handle the losers bracket because of the, they don't have the starting pitching that everybody else does. Let's be honest. But I do love their bullpen if they can stay close, and those guys will be able to pitch a bunch in this thing.
Is that a real golden eagle on Justin Quinn's shoulder, or is this like a expert Photoshop
yes,
job?
It's amazing
Because it is. Our producer says I have no idea, but I love it.
Well done.
I feel like the eagle will be leaning a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, that's.
He's very upright for an eagle that's on the side of someone's arm.
I hope this is something that they actually do. Is like if you go play at Oral Roberts, one of the things that you have to learn is falconry. You got to like call the bird to come land on your shoulder. That's just
Kendall. That was some serious scouting. You just literally critiqued the Golden Eagle's posture. I love that.
Yeah,
that's just very I don't know how you like sit sideways. Maybe
I like it. I don't know. I've never had the pleasure of tangling with a.
We'll ask Pat. We'll ask Pat that tomorrow.
Yes. Omaha. Googling Golden Eagles. All right, boys. We got one more team. We're gonna finish with some of the fun names from the tournament. I found my index card and I am ready to rock. But the Florida Gators are the last team. Florida won a very compelling super regional against South Carolina. South Carolina looked like the team that got off to that 34-6 start. The game 1 was an epic super regional game. At the end of the day, Florida's playing too good right now. I mean, that's really what it boiled down to. They are arguably the most talented roster in this tournament, and they have found another gear. So Florida, very impressive in beating South Carolina in what I thought was a very compelling super regional. I have the offense, and I think what. I know what I put here is stay diverse, and this lineup does offer a high level of slug, but not every game allows for that, and they don't have to play that way. Like, they're not one of these teams that has to hit home runs to score. They're so athletic. I think about Jack Caglione. I think about Wyatt Langford as a 70 runner underway. But the player I really want to bring up for Florida is Josh Rivera. Josh Rivera has been the best. He was the best player on the field in that super regional, in my opinion, when you incorporate defense and making big plays and winning big pitches when the game's in the balance. Cade Kurland is a little baller. BT Riopel is running into balls. I mean, they just have a lot of different options for this group. It's a very deep group. So, for Florida, just be up for any kind of game, and you're capable of playing any kind of game. So there you go. That's me on the Gators. Pitching is you, Kendall, correct?
Yeah, if you remember back on the Super Regional podcast last week, I think we all agreed that the big key for Florida going in that South Carolina series was their starting pitching, giving them some length. And if you look at that series against South Carolina, they gave them length, and that equaled a series victory. You look at Brandon Sproat, guys, 6 innings. Hurston Waldrop, I thought probably, I hadn't seen all of his starts, but it's hard to imagine that he's been better than he was against South Carolina over the weekend. Those two guys, combined for 20 strikeouts and 2 starts. If Florida is able to get let's just say 6 or 7 innings out of their starters, and they're able to turn that game over to Phillip Abner and Cade Fisher and Brandon Neely and guys like that, they become a very, potent force just with that bullpen and their depth back there. So again, I think in this field, if they're starting rotation, can give them some length, they can turn things over to that bullpen. They can match up with absolutely anyone in this field, and they might have the best bullpen in this field.
Certainly very talented. Fitzy, stat that matters.
Wake Forest has the best bullpen in the field, but Wake Forest has the best most things in the field. That doesn't mean they're going to win it all, but boy,
you can't give it all to Wake, Aaron.
I know. We're going to talk about the Gators starting pitching a little more here, because it's been really, really good. Really, since I was in Gainesville and saw them sweep Vanderbilt, I think I deserve a good deal of the credit here. Over the last 16 games, starting with that 3-game sweep of Vanderbilt in mid-May, Florida starting pitching has logged a 2.40 ERA, a 1.12 WHIP, and a 106-29 strikeout to walk ratio over 90 innings. So that's good. It includes a 1.60 ERA, by the way, a 1.02 WHIP, and a 53-13 strikeout walk ratio during the NCAA tournament. That's 45 innings. So they've been awesome. And, that's I agree with Kendall's point. It comes down to Sproat and Waldrop. I mean, especially that first game for me. If Sproat is sharp, that's so huge for them to get off to in that first game against Virginia and a lead offensive team. That's a matchup I've really got circled here for this first weekend.
Very good. Joseph, you have the path, correct?
That's correct. Come in and close this thing down. Cue Inner Sandman as I jog in from the bullpen.
Yes.
This, much like Wake, if this team plays the way they have for the most part down the stretch, that's going to be good enough. I think they have as much runway as any team other than maybe Wake Forest, and those two teams obviously are in different brackets, wouldn't meet until the championship series. They could end up in the losers bracket and be, that's a tougher path, but I think they could be fine doing that. They've obviously got 3 starters they really, really trust. They've got 4 bullpen guys that have pitched really well of late that can all be kind of stretched out. We saw that most famously with Cade Fisher in the regional. So, and the offense is as good as it has been all year, right? So this is a team that if they just show up and be who they are, I like them to come out of this bracket to face off against Wake Forest. And then look, if both of those teams are playing at the top of their potential, first of all, congratulations to us as viewers.
That's right.
But also, I don't really know, that could go either way. That'd be a lot of fun, but like that would be a fascinating matchup there, because it feels like these two teams have been on a little bit of a collision course throughout the second half of the season.
All right. Well done. I think, gentlemen, we're doing our picks now.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I guess we'll go. It'll be Kendall, then Fitzy, then Joe, then me. Kendall, who did you pick?
And let's do our bracket winners as well as our overall winner here.
Yeah, the two, bracket winner and then overall champion. Go ahead, KR. Oh, you're muted.
Almost made it all the way through. It was a good pick.
Well, yeah.
2 outs in the 9th. Kendall.
I didn't want you guys to hear me clicking.
Proves one.
I care about you guys.
Gutter ball, as Chris from Louisville would say.
Yeah, I've got Wake Forest winning bracket 1.
Yeah.
And I've got Florida winning the other bracket, and I've got Florida winning the national championship.
Very good.
Yeah.
I think
Go Gators. Give it.
Gators.
What is it? Give it a go.
No.
Go
Gators.
Gators.
I'll just do this. Just like Sully against Mississippi State.
That's right. Love it. Fitzy, go ahead. Who do you select here?
Gosh, I really struggled because I picked Stanford heading into the NCAA tournament, and they made it to Omaha. And usually this is where I'm stubborn and I just dig my heels in. And I say, well, I'm just going to ride the team that I picked.
Go with the digs.
But I'm spooked a little bit by Stanford. I was spooked by the fact that they've had to ride Quinn Matthews so heavily. I can't imagine he comes back to start the first game after throwing 156 pitches on whatever day that was. Was that Monday? There's Sunday. But anyway, I guess maybe he could come back, start the opener. But regardless, like, what's he got left in the tank? And then their bullpen, as I mentioned, spooks me right now. I'm back nervous about that unit again. Look, the bottom line is, I just watched Wake Forest obliterate Alabama for a couple of games. I saw them once at the regional. You just have to nitpick to find reasons not to pick Wake because they're just so good. Yeah. And it's just like Louder, Hartle, Keener. Like, you got 3 really good starters. If you need a 4th, you got Sullivan. But I kind of love that right now you can just, Sullivan's such a weapon in the bullpen, guys. He looked awesome against Alabama.
Vicious, yeah.
You throw him into the mix, the bullpen that already has, Michael Massey and Cole Rowland and Cam Manassi, and they're all different looks and have different strengths. Like, the variety and depth on that pitching staff is so outstanding. I can't pick against them to win the bracket. I do have Wake Forest coming out of that side. I just, the pitching staff travels, and for all the reasons I've talked about, I am going to pick Virginia on the other side. Just love. Obviously, I love the way they've played in the postseason. They've been awesome. They've just played suffocating defense and pitched extremely well, and their offense is elite. They're a super fun team that fits perfectly in this ballpark. I hate picking an all ACC matchup because I know I'm going to wear it from all the SEC fans, especially probably all the fans everywhere. But that's what I got. I got Wake Forest over Virginia in the finals, guys.
Love that. Joe?
Wake Forest on one side, Florida on the other. Florida for the national title.
Look at this guy just shoving it in my face. My long-windedness. He says, you know what, Fitzy, this is how a pro does it. In and out. Boom.
Yeah. Fitzy, no, I'll tell you, I have the same exact picks as you. I picked Wake Forest. I struggled with Virginia versus Florida. I really struggled with that one. I kind of coin flipped that one and went Virginia, all ACC final too. And I also went Wake Forest. As Marty McFly would say, I believe for Wake Forest, this is their density. I really do.
Yes. My God, Runes coming strong at the end of the show.
Yes.
Wow.
Let me, as we wrap, let me give you some names from the tournament. The Penn Quakers beating Auburn in the 11th inning on bunt, double by their 7-hole hitter, bunt, single, squeeze. Walk, double, bunt, single, squeeze. And the Penn pitcher, Ryan Dromboski, Jay Walker and Danny Wexelman and Conway calling him Grand Slam Brown because he had 2 grand slams over the weekend. For Ryder, Danny Kerwin, it was like watching an American Legion pitcher, like he'd thrown a million pitches and he's taken his hat off, like just exasperated on the mound. And then Richie Sicka makes the catch in center field. We don't have enough Richies in our lives anymore. And then the name I really wanted to leave you guys with, our beloved Blue Devils of Central Connecticut State, the left-hander, Vinny Spizzuco. Come on. Who doesn't?
Vinny.
Yeah, like, we need to have some pasta with Vinny Spizzuco in Omaha. Come on now.
Who was the guy who was getting heckled? It was Gio DiGiacomo, apparently,
they said
in Charlottesville. They were saying, they were heckling him and saying, hey, you're not even Italian. You eat pasta sauce out of a jar that you bought at Kroger, I thought that was pretty good.
Oh, so good. All right. So we are all headed to Omaha in the next several hours. Again, thanks to our friends at Wilson. Can't wait to hang out with these guys over. We encourage everyone, check out the Wilson Omaha experience over in the Baseball Village. You will not be disappointed. The swag is amazing. You got to get into the Village.
You get a shirt like this right here. This is the new
there
one.
you go.
Fresh off the
Fitzy.
presses.
Hey, now.
2023.
Get yourself some Omaha swag. Hey, for the people that are listening, when we see you out there, please introduce yourselves. When we see you in and around the park, it's kind of like that one time a year we all get to be together. And that's it, gentlemen. Can't wait to see you in person. And that's it, everyone. We will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.